Is Sonic dead? I wish. Nah, I'm just screwing with you. Today we're exploring the state of one of the video game industry's most iconic characters, Sonic the Hedgehog, and asking how and why the blue blur has fallen from grace, with his claim to fame these days being that his franchise has diminished to oversaturated memes, and that his fandom has lurked its way into strange, perverse territory that only encourages more online mockery. Now, if you're a hardcore Sonic fan, fret not. We're not here today to jump on the trolling bandwagon. But you can't deny that the Hedgehog's games have seen much better days. The current state of Sonic games are pathetic in comparison to the games of his glory days. Back in 1991, Sega, in an attempt to compete with Nintendo and its growing Mario fame, decided that they needed to get a new mascot, and trashed their previous one, Alex Kidd. Sonic, along with what would become his nemesis, Dr. Robotnik, were the products of an internal competition at the Sega Technical Institute, and Sonic was chosen as the mascot, which then set a game in the works. That game would become the 1991 Sonic the Hedgehog speed-based platformer, the game that set the status quo for the next two sequels, which critics often hail as being even better than the first. They were simpler games back then. There wasn't a huge focus on plot. Hell, Tails, who was introduced in the second game in 1992, just kind of appeared. Knuckles got a much better story-based introduction in Sonic 3, and it was a pretty well-crafted one, but still stuck to simplicity. Then came the 3D games. A desire to compete with the kinds of stuff that Nintendo and other developers and publishers were pumping out, Sega gave Sonic a 3D makeover, but the character just didn't translate as well into that format. Sure, some of the Sonic 3D games have been fun, like Sonic Generations or Colors, but Sega has always had trouble converting their success with Sonic's platformers into a successful 3D world one, a vaster landscape with more potential and possibilities, all of which Sega just couldn't make work nearly as well as other franchises had. This is where the decline starts. Sonic games increasingly became worse in all respects: the gameplay mechanics, the level design, the writing, the introduction of superfluous characters, and of course underdeveloped games, often due to time crunches, which left the games buggy and the controls pretty poor. The morale of Sonic teams started to show major cracks. Ex-employees started to blog about the team's disdain for having to make Sonic games. Other games that Sega developed had mediocre to poor success, making Sega rely even more on the blue money maker. Things hit an all-time low with the release of Sonic 06. Meant to be a big revival of the character, the 15th anniversary of Sonic, it actually ended up becoming the worst Sonic game in the history of the franchise, and one of the most critically panned mainstream titles in video game history. The narratives progressively got weirder from there. Sonic Unleashed sees Sonic transforming into a werehog, for example. And by then, the internet's response to the lack of effort on Sega's part when crafting these games is becoming more and more potent, especially with the higher volume of gamers now publishing videos and their own reviews of the games on YouTube. We still see a large percentage of loyal fans, but many are disappointed. Now flash forward to last year. A shining beacon of hope hits the video game market with Sonic Mania, the 25th anniversary platform homage game, developed by a player who is a hardcore Sonic fan named Christian Whitehead, and had developed many a Sonic fan game previously. He had been working for Sega on mobile ports of older Sonic games, when he approached the series producer Takashi Iizuka about a prototype he had crafted called Sonic Discovery, a remixed version of earlier Sonic platform games. Takashi dug it, and Christian and his team produced the game for Sega for Sonic's 25th anniversary. It was a mega hit, not only with fans but with critics too, the kind of reception a Sonic game hasn't received in years. So when Sega announced that it would be releasing a new Sonic 3D game to follow it up called Sonic Forces, people were really expecting it to be a huge hit. But it wasn't. Sonic Forces fell privy to the same criticism that so many Sonic 3D games before it had endured. It was buggy, the story was awful, the controls were rigid and difficult, the levels were badly crafted and not really replayable as Sega had promised. It did include a create your own avatar feature, but some critics felt that the feature was more of an add-on last minute, rather than integral to the game as a whole. All in all, it was all over the place, and it was a massive disappointment, especially coming off of the success of Sonic Mania. So how does all that happen? Well, at the end of the day, regardless of how much we analyze and dissect the franchise, it's painfully obvious that Sonic the Hedgehog isn't going anywhere. This is because of two reasons that go hand in hand. The first is that fans still adore Sonic. Hell, we here at Top 10 Gaming receive messages and comments from young fans of the Blue Hedgehog that are pretty frequent, with personal stories as to why fans have attachment to the character. Some grew up playing his games, others found asylum in them, some have nostalgic attachment, and for some, Sonic was their first introduction to video games. Their parents bought them a Sonic game when they got their first system, and they've been loyal to the character ever since, even if it was a game like Sonic Forces. It may be hard for some older gamers to reconcile with this, considering Sega ain't doing itself any favors in the writing department, but to many young kids picking up a controller for the first time, Sonic seems cool. It's why there's so many original characters out there to begin with, and why that in itself is a meme. In retrospect, maybe they'll look back and cringe and realize that the games don't hold up at all, but they'll still have an affection for the character regardless. Or at least, most will. Now combine that sentiment with the second reason why Sonic won't die out anytime soon. The fact that Sega is fully aware that Sonic has this massive base of loyal fans, and that they can easily pump out a Sonic game dismissive of quality and people will still buy it. It's a surefire thing. While sales have steadily been on the decline since Sonic games broached the 3D territory, the blue blur still makes them a whole lot of cash. Sonic Mania's well-deserved success only further perpetuated this. Fans believe that Sega was being more mindful of the Sonic games they published, and were becoming more open to outside developers taking a shot at making Sonic games. And that was enough to convince fans to go out and buy Sonic Forces, a game that they purposely did not give advance copies of to critics prior to its release. Only review site Famitsu got a copy, and they gave it a stellar 35 out of 40 review, but some have speculated choosing them was playing up a bias in order to ensure that the game wouldn't get trashed before it even came out. That's downright sleazy, and evidence enough that Sega doesn't give a shit about the series' integrity or their fanbase. They're just determined to pump out games and make a buck. At the end of the day, to Sega, Sonic is a mascot. He's a character who, despite constant efforts in all forms of Sonic media, doesn't need to be a fully fleshed out, well-developed character. He just needs to be cool, or at least appear to be so.
Oh yeah! This is happening!
Now in tandem with that, think about Nintendo's Mario for a sec. Over the years, he's been peppered with character development, but if you're looking at him from the perspective of a casual Mario fan, you know, the kind of gamer who every now and then will buy a Mario title because it seems like a lot of fun, there's never been a massive emphasis on the character's personal narrative. It's there, subtly woven in by Nintendo at times, but never forced down players' throats, never beaten over our heads with it. You could also chalk that up to good writing. And it's the same with many other franchises. Sure, Link from The Legend of Zelda has gone through a ton of character development over the years, but often he's more so seen as a distant figure, a hero that the player can impress themselves upon more so than learn about. I mean, even look at Pac-Man or Pikachu. Pikachu is his own special case. The character got a full personality in the Pokemon anime, but in the game, minus Pokemon Yellow, and even that's a stretch, there's no efforts to develop the electric rat into a character. It just exists. Players will project what they want onto the characters instead. So when you have someone like Sonic, who Sega has spent years and years pushing and pulling away from the idea that he's simply just a mascot, efforts which by the way are inconsistent across the board in the comics, the games, and the animated shows, it makes perfect sense that the Hedgehog character has suffered from so many crippling revivals and attempts at being personable, all of which hinders his credibility, and makes players less engaged, which results in the dropping of sales, inevitably leading Sega scratching their heads at what they can do to make Sonic relevant again, all while fighting an uphill battle against deadlines and more superior game releases. I mean, how do you really compete with Nintendo's innovations? Or with complex storylines like The Last of Us? You just can't. And that's caused Sonic and Sega to flounder. Something that the internet has eagerly eaten up, causing such a massive influx of Sonic memes and mockery. Also, it helps that Sega obviously doesn't give a shit, making the memes that much more potent and prevalent. So what does all of that conclude to? Long story short, Sonic isn't dead as long as fans still adore the character. The integrity of Sega is though, and until the company itself goes under, which it likely won't anytime soon, Sonic won't be going anywhere. Here's hoping that somewhere down the line though, Sega decides to not suck, or at least start licensing Sonic games to other developers. Can we just get Sonic Mania's Christian Whitehead to spearhead the development of every Sonic game from here on out? Yeah, that'd be greatly appreciated. Alright, so what are all of your thoughts on the current state of Sonic the Hedgehog? Do you think that the character should disappear and die? Or do you think that under the proper leadership and a little TLC from Sega that the character could return to his glory days? Give us a shout with all of your thoughts and your feels in those comments below. Now if you dug this video, please spread the love and hit that like button. Be sure to subscribe, and check out the playlist that we have up on your screen right now for more great Sonic and gaming content. In the meantime, thanks for watching everybody, I'll catch you all in the next video.